There's an old saying, don't pee on me and tell me it's rain. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen right now with everything from coronavirus to President Trump needs to concede to these governors who are acting like these would-be little dictators, these little emperors that think that they can just keep their states in perpetual lockdown, threaten businesses, threaten their citizens, and they can do it all in the name of we have a crisis and I have emergency power, which basically means I am your be-all, end-all ruler of your universe in your state and even in your living room. You better be wearing a mask if you've got somebody in your house who doesn't live there. I have had it with all of this hogwash, and I got a thing or two to say about it. You know, if you're a dog owner, you understand that dogs, no matter whether you think you have the smartest dog on the planet or you are convinced that your dog is, well, intellectually challenged, there's one thing about a dog. They're loyal. I mean, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what your income is. It doesn't matter what kind of home you live in. If you give that dog food and water and occasionally acknowledge his existence in your life, that dog is loyal. He will lay at your feet. He will defend you, even if it's just a little Chihuahua dog and all it is that little high-pitched bark, yip, and then nips at people. A dog is loyal. And so I consider people who are disloyal lower than dogs. And Mike DeWine of Ohio, I'm looking in your direction, you little... I have to be careful. I am a pastor. But I am beyond sick and tired of carefully crafted politicians who they're just slimy. They are like used car salesmen. You just feel dirty being around them, and that's exactly how I feel every time Mike DeWine has a press conference. I feel like I need to take a shower. I just feel like I have been in the presence of a brothel madam in Mike DeWine. For him to do what he's doing in the state of Ohio is absolutely unconscionable. And I'll get to that in a moment when it comes to the fear-mongering of coronavirus. And we've got all these spiking cases and it's over 1 billion gazillion and now we got more people going into the hospital. I've had it, and I've got some things I want to enlighten you on. But before I get to that, Mike DeWine, now referring to Joe Biden as president-elect. And he said, now the president's got his right to push that through the courts, but I think we're going to have to accept the inevitable that Joe Biden is the president. And of course, it was DeWine who also famously said, even during the campaign, well, I find it ironic and a little laughable that some people think Ohio is a Republican state. Gee, why would we think that with a Republican governor, you moron? Why would people think that? Oh, that's because you're really not a Republican. You're a Democrat dressed in Republican drag. I forgot. You're not trans species. You are politically binary, non-whatever. These politicians like Mitt Romney that just talk out of both sides of their mouth. It is beyond nauseating. And the coronation of a guy with dementia as the president-elect is just a return to that whole political snake oil salesman. Ugh. That said, DeWine, do you really think that you're going to be Joe Biden's pal? Well, you probably will be, because you're a sellout like John Kasich. And what you're doing in the state of Ohio with these endless mandates and now basically threatening Ohioans that if the numbers don't go down, we're going back into lockdown. So the first thing we're going to do is I now have the masked police, and any business that's not enforcing the masks on your customers, we're gonna first give you a warning, and then we're going to shut you down for 24 hours, and then we're going to fine you. Really? You will do? what we say. So, this is a so-called Republican. Yeah, okay. Okay. You know, I talked to someone recently, a very dear friend of mine, who was very outspoken about coronavirus and what was being done and how it was being used politically. And then he contracted coronavirus. He spent 45 days in an ICU unit, got to go home for about a week, and then had to go back to ICU for another 20 days. He is now home again, and he is on the mend, but he is on the slow mend. And I got an opportunity to speak with him on the phone last night. And I wondered if his opinion and his really outspoken position against the madness and hysteria surrounding coronavirus had changed given his personal experience. And he said, not one bit. He understands that he had other health issues which played an integral part into making coronavirus very problematic for him personally. He also understands the only way we are ever going to get through this, class, pay attention, herd immunity. And the more they keep putting us in lockdowns, that's not fixing anything. It's like you have a gallon of water. You're either going to drink that gallon of water all at one time and be done with it, or you're going to drink it 1 ounce a day and take forever. And I hate to say it this way, but God did, when it came to a viral outbreak, there is a plan, a way it was designed to work, and science will back this up. It has to rip through. It has to spread. The only way you ever really stop a virus is for people to be exposed to it. That's how it works. It's called herd immunity. Masks are pointless. Wearing your little Mr. Coffee filter is not doing anything for you. If you're not changing that surgical throwaway mask every 15 to 20 minutes, it's pointless. And cloth masks are absolutely ridiculous. I realize you can get them in designer colors now, and there are companies that will print your logo or whatever you want on them, and it's become a new business. I got that. But they don't work. Even Governor DeWine the other day saying, if you got a health issue and you can't wear a mask because you can't breathe, you're going to have to wear the plastic shield. So we're going to walk around with plexiglass on our foreheads. Has anybody in the DeWine atmosphere orbit that works for him or is part of his advisory, does anybody ever pull this guy aside and say, besides the fact that you're a four-eyed, beady little runt snivel twit, you're also a moron? Stop saying these things, because it's obviously that you fell out of the stupid tree and hit every branch head first. Do you have any idea how asinine and ridiculous you sound when you say these things? I realize you have a hard time seeing above the podium to read your teleprompter, but really, please, stop. And then stop with these threats and we're going to follow the science. Really, I wasn't aware that you were a scientist. And you only seem to follow one particular group of scientists. Those that have a narrative, those that have a particular agenda, and you never consider the scientists that have other things to say and have proven their point. But that's right. They get policed by big tech in Silicon Valley, and their videos and everything they have to say gets pulled and erased. But coming out and saying what you said about the president, well, he's got the right to fight this, but it's going to be... The deep state have used a virus to instill panic and fear, and the deep state wants Donald Trump to just concede. I'm going to conclude this monologue with something that I wrote to someone, a friend of mine, claims to be a Republican, but seems to be symptomatic of some of these so-called Republicans who are now congratulating Joe Biden. Why, Mitt Romney has congratulated him, and Chris Christie has congratulated him. We have these other key prominent Republicans, and CNN is keeping track of which congresspeople have not. Finally, Lindsey Graham woke up. He had been flip-flopping. One night, he's going to give $500,000 to the Trump legal defense team, and then the next day he's saying he'll work with the new president-elect. And then it was like Shazam, Batman. He had a come-to-Jesus moment. There is enough overwhelming avalanche of evidence now that these Dominion voting systems, which flip votes in Michigan and are responsible for Georgia and several other states, it is a corrupt system. And when Texas ran tests on them, they found it was flipping votes there, and they absolutely begged the lieutenant governor, do not buy this system. Don't do it. And it's problematic. It produces fraudulent results. And it's, again, very interesting and telltale that Nancy Botox Pelosi's chief of staff for over 20 years is now the CEO of this particular company, and Diane Frankenstein's husband is a major financial investor in the company. Oh, and we find out that Bill and Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation have some connection to this, and maybe that's why Hillary said, hey, Joe, don't you concede. We got the voting machines. We'll just change the results. This is happening, people. We're not on drugs. We're not hallucinating. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't wishful thinking. This is happening. Now, I will say this. That doesn't mean that the president gets this overturned. We have exposed it, and what we're also exposing is the fact that the deep state, this is it. I mean, they are going to fight to the bitter end on this thing. The Bible says the heathen rage, and they rage because they know their days are numbered. And though we all have on our side of the aisle a result we would like to see happen here, I mean, ultimately, yes, God is in control. The truth of the matter is this ought to be overturned. There is blatant fraud. Hey, you remember this little spat that Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump had back in 2016? Remember that? Remember that? And everybody was just outraged at how President Trump talked to her, and that made her a little starlet, and then she moved from Fox News over to NBC. Well, you know, Shazam, Megyn Kelly is one of President Trump's biggest defenders out there right now. You need to check out her podcast. And by the way, she did an interview recently with Glenn Beck, and I'm no Glenn Beck fan, but she is an ardent defender of the president right now. And Megyn Kelly, who again, 4 years ago, she and the president were literally at civil war with one another. She is now saying we are watching blatant fraud and theft unfold before our eyes. Bump-a-dum-bump. So what I'm saying is, yes, I believe the president ought to be vindicated, and I am believing that God is well able to flip the script and do that. But if that doesn't happen, understand that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Let me say that again. Even if the president and his legal team can't overturn this, it doesn't mean there wasn't fraud. It just means that the deep state is so tentacled and entrenched, and they have corrupted so much that that's it. And hey, if you're a believer and you understand anything at all about prophecy, on that level, that's good news. As an American patriot, as a dad, I'm fearful for the nation and what it's going to look like and what my kids are going to be growing up in and trying to raise young families in. But as a pastor, as a believer, as someone who understands a little something about theology and prophecy, hey, you know, we're getting a front row seat to what could be. That all said, there's a little note that I shared to someone. The president needs to concede. He needs to concede. And this is what I wrote to him. With all respect, I love you, but you're embarrassing yourself over your lack of understanding that, number one, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. Number two, none of the states have certified anything yet. Number three, there is nothing in the Constitution which says he must concede. In fact, Stacey Abrams, who ran as the 2018 Democratic gubernatorial candidate and lost in the state of Georgia, has never conceded. Biden introduced her on the campaign trail this year as the real governor of Georgia. Doesn't sound like much of a concession to me, does it to you? Hollywood and their production companies have boycotted now the state of Georgia and will not produce or film any new movies or TV shows from that location. How come that isn't hurting democracy? There is, in our system, a process which allows for elections to be contested. If, and again, if Biden is the winner, then nothing's going to change, is it? Why this mad rush for Trump to concede and not do recounts in the states where there are literally hundreds of documented examples of fraud? And despite what you claim that Homeland Security says this is the most fair, problem-free election ever, which I still haven't found where they said that, these people have come forward and given sworn testimony under penalty of perjury and prison. The courts have got this. Old Joe can get ready, and the media will continue to promote him as the president-elect. But Trump does not have to concede. The process, which is the Democratic way, will play out. If Biden did win, then he has nothing to worry about, does he? The media's push to silence witnesses and discredit fraud claims and stop recounts, very telling, because they certainly weren't doing that under Al Gore. Oh, one more thing. There have already been 6,000 votes that flipped back to Trump in one county alone in the state of Michigan. So your example that in any mass recount there have only ever been 2,500 votes flipped is irrelevant. Trump turned out over 72 million voters, more than Obama in his re-election, which only saw 69 million people vote for him, and more than any Republican ever. We'll just see if the guy with dementia, who spent most of the campaign in his basement and could only draw 2 or 3 dozen people to his events, inspired millions of real, living voters to come out and support him. Well, that's my Friday rant. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, give us a thumbs up or a like. I call it like. Somebody said, I can't find the like button. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up. Hey, tell me what you thought of this video, my opining opinion, and try to share this to your social media platforms. Make sure you smack the bell and click the word all to get notification of my next rant.